Hi, and welcome back. So, with this last final video, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about basically how to create a build of your application, and I'm going to touch on both Android and iOS applications. Now, let me be clear. When I say build, that means I'm actually going to show you how to build uh, an ad hoc or a demo version of this application. Now, this video will not touch on the actual release of the application to the Google Play Store or the iOS or Apple App Store. I will go ahead and place in the comments below a couple different links for you to be able to utilize to be able to take your application to those individual markets. But for the time being, this will be outside of the scope of this video. So if you remember in the previous set of videos, we've gotten to the application to the point where we have added analytics, we have completed the build of the application, and now, for all intents and purposes, we're done. So we're ready to go ahead and create one final build of our application and test it on our device. So there's a couple different things what we need to do to be able to prep the application for an environment. And what we're going to do is we're just going to say Ionic platform add iOS Android. Now, if you're working specifically on Android, you don't have to add iOS, or if you're working specifically with iOS, you don't have to add Android. So the nice thing is you can just kind of chain them together if you so choose. Now, this probably isn't going to do anything for my application because I've actually set this up as that the platform iOS has already been added, as you can see, and it should give me something that resembles that for Android. If you just give it Ionic platform add Android, and it should give me the exact same error. Yep, there you go. So since these have already been added, I'm going to do one more thing, and Ionic doesn't necessarily touch on this very much in their documentation, but it's a command called Ionic prepare. And what this does is that just make sure that all of the various Cordova plugins are in place, as well as the necessary hooks are in place. So I'm going to go ahead and enter in that command. And we'll see a couple messages pop up here. Apologize, my computer is running a little slow right now at the moment. All right, now for me, since I've already done all the necessary things for this application, I didn't need to prepare anything. Now, if you're doing this for the first time, you should see a series of messages appear. Okay? So now, at this juncture, we are ready to create a build. So I'm going to start off with iOS first, and then I will then transition into Android. So obviously, again, if you're here specifically for iOS, go ahead and tune in, or if you're here specifically for Android, feel free to fast forward the video a little bit. Okay. So what we're going to do is to create a build first. Is we're going to say Ionic build iOS. And what this will do is that it will go ahead and begin a compilation script. So what you can see right here is that it's cleaning the environment, starting to copy over the necessary assets. This NGC and the lint is actually a couple steps that Ionic has in place to go ahead and verify that all of the JavaScript and or TypeScript that you have entered is in fact valid and it will not error. So that's a really nice thing, as it helps to prevent bugs. As you can see that the linting of both the NGC has finished successfully, and now it's actually starting to create a bundle of the Angular 2 application that will then set on top of the native iOS wrapper. Now, to be clear, To my knowledge, this is in fact a Objective-C wrapper. This is not a Swift wrapper. This is probably something that they will probably change in the future or update in the future, but for the time being, this is Objective-C. Now, as you can see right here, my build was successfully completed. I want to disclose is that if you are in fact running this for the first time, it could very well take a little bit longer. Also, too, this has been known, depending on the amount of RAM that's on your machine, it will not necessarily complete. You'll get a whole bunch of this gobbledygook, but you'll never actually see this message. So if that happens again, just feel free to go ahead and rerun this command, and then it should speed up through the process the second time around. Okay, so now that we can see that our build is in fact succeeded, what we need to do is we need to open up our Xcode file within our project. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And so you can see right here, this is my application. And I'm going to go into Platforms, iOS. And as you can see right there, there is our Xcode application. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And Xcode will go ahead and start up. All right, now since I have already created a couple different builds of this application just in terms of preparation for the screencast, my screen actually does already have some warnings in place. You can see that I've already created a successful build, so you probably won't see any of this stuff. Also, too, Xcode is notorious for doing a very lengthy and in-depth indexing of your application. And again, if this is the first time that you're doing this, it could take anywhere from 20 seconds to a minute and or 2 minutes, depending on how fast your machine is. So since I've already run this, I don't have to do that. So now you can see that here's our project. I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and for the time being, I'm just going to go ahead and leave all these settings alone. I've already got my certificates managed, and all this stuff that you see right here is, again, like I said, is probably going to be outside the scope of this screencast. There's tons of resources out there on what it's going to take to go ahead and create certificates for your application. Also, too, it's worth disclosing, if you do in fact want to release your application into the Apple App Store, that does require a iOS application or developer membership, which is $100 a year, and then that will allow you to produce the necessary certificates so you can sign your application and then submit it for review. So again, I'm not really going to go over any of this stuff. But what I want to draw your attention to is this little area up here. So as you can see right here, I actually already have my iPhone connected. And I'm actually going to show you what is going on using this little application called Reflector. So I'm going to go ahead and power up my phone here. Okay, as you can see, there is my iPhone. So you can see all of the ridiculous applications that I have on my phone. So what we're going to do is, as you can see right here, again, it's still connected to my iPhone. So I'm going to go ahead and click this play button. And what this is going to do is that it's actually going to create a build of my application, and it's going to install it on my phone. So now you can see that the little app icon has shown up here. Give it a second. And now it's opening. So if you remember, this is our launch screen that we created. Got a little loading screen, and again, here is the application running on my iPhone. Now, one of the great things about Xcode, and I know a lot of people have a lot of bad things to say about Xcode, but when you're running an application in this state, you actually get console logs right here. So right here, there are a couple of errors: unable to execute SQL, blah blah blah. This, don't worry about this. This is actually running as expected, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to begin interacting with this application so you can actually see the way it's supposed to behave. So I'm going to go ahead and tap that plus button to go ahead and get our modal to pop up. I'm going to go ahead and add Mickey Mouse as a person. Go ahead and hit submit. Now you can see our little toast up there was added, as well as Mickey Mouse has now been added as a person within Who Paid Last. Now as I begin tapping on Mickey Mouse, you can see that you and them begins showing up. And then if I use that long press directive that we created, press and hold, now you can see that yep, delete them or cancel. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel that because I want to go ahead and keep Mickey Mouse. Also too, what we're going to do is focus on this little gear over here. Go ahead and click on that, and now you can see there's our app information, and I can go ahead and swipe back, which is the native iOS feature. And I'm going to go ahead and tap the back button, and there you have it. You can now see that the application is working great on my phone, and it's running as desired. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to Xcode, hit stop, and now as you can see on my phone, it's no longer running. So the other nice thing is about this is that since I've hit stop, it's actually created an ad hoc build of this application on my phone. So I actually can go ahead and disconnect my phone from my computer and Xcode for that matter, and actually will still work. It's not like it's streaming from Xcode. All right, so that's it for iOS. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and transition a little bit to Android. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this, close Reflector, close Xcode. Go ahead and clean this up a little bit. All right. So if you remember, this does require Android Studio to be installed. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Android Studio. Now there is a couple gotchas, if you will, with Android Studio and when it comes in terms with Ionic. So if you're unfamiliar with the versioning system of Android, and I'm just going to exit out of this for right now. Android right now is supporting Nougat, which is the most recent, I think it was an Android 7, which is the most recent version of Android. However, Ionic, at least at this point in time, is not supporting Nougat. It's only supporting Marshmallow. So therefore, we need to modify our environment to be able to support that. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Configure, and I'm looking specifically for this SDK Manager. Okay, so first things first, I want to make sure that Android 6.0, which in this case is Marshmallow, an API level of 3, is installed. If it's not, go ahead and click on this checkbox right here and go ahead and hit apply. That'll go ahead and begin a download process to go ahead and install this version of the Android SDK into your environment. Now, there's one more thing that we need to do, and again, as I have found, this is something that Ionic doesn't necessarily disclose within their documentation. This is something that I have found that you definitely need to do. So what we're going to do is click on this Launch Standalone SDK Manager, okay? And then you get this window pop up that it's got a bunch of stuff listed in here. So specifically what I want to do is I want to draw your attention to this stuff up here. So first things first, if you were downloading the Android SDK Manager fresh for the very first time, it could very well have Android SDK 25 or 24.0.3 and have these checked, and it'll tell you installed. Okay. First things first, you need to go ahead and check those and then delete those packages. Okay, because again, as I was saying, Ionic does not support anything with those versions of the Android SDK. What we want is the latest version of 23.0.3, which is, as you can see right here in these build tools. So to install those, you just click on that checkbox, and then you go ahead and install that specific package. Now, depending on your internet connection, it could take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. But once those are done, then you're ready to go. So go ahead. So once we're done, we're going to go ahead and close that. We're going to go ahead and close that, and I'm just going to go ahead and exit out of Android Studio. Okay, quit. So now I'm going to enter my command, Ionic build Android. Now, this build process will definitely take a lot longer than the iOS build step does, because since iOS kind of does their build step in a two-step process where you're actually building something, you're actually building the Xcode environment, and then you're actually finishing the build all within Xcode. Well, the Android build process actually builds everything within the Ionic environment. So when I actually click Ionic build Android, we're actually building out the entire application as if it's ready to go and ready for deployment into the Google Play Store. Okay? So we're just going to sit here and just wait for a little bit longer. And again, it could very well take a little bit longer than what this is taking, because since I've built this before, some of that stuff could very well be cached. So if you're doing this for the first time, it could take a little bit longer. All right, yeah, and as you can see right there, that took 4 or 5 seconds tops, which is extremely fast. I've had this take anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes before. So, and then as you can see right here, this is where our APK is. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up a new window, CD. Whoops. So, okay, then we can see there is our environment. So I'm going to CD into build, and then we'll CD into outputs, CD into APK, and there is our APK. All right, well, now just a quick review, what we've done is we've actually created a build in both iOS as well as Android. And specifically for iOS, we actually went ahead and implemented the rest of the build within Xcode, and then I showed you on my device that the application does in fact work. So I will refer to the links below, and to finish out the project, be able to deploy to either the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. And for what it's worth, I hope you guys enjoyed the workshop, and feel free to send me a note with any questions that you may have. All right, thanks.